Sinanian.
Here.
Mayor Garpetian.
Here. Now please have your report.
If we may also have a roll call for authority. Madam Chair, may I have the, should I call roll?
Yes, please.
Authority member Zagajanian.
Present.
Garpetian.
Here.
Najarian. Sinanian.
Here.
Parazian. Chair Devine.
Here.
The agenda for the November 7, 2017 joint public meeting of the City Council and the Housing Authority was posted on Friday, November 3, 2017 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Before you is Director of Community Services and Parks regarding status of program planning for the fiscal year 2018-19 CDBG, ESG, and Home Annual Action Plan and transfer of fiscal year 2017-18 CDBG funds. And 1A is Council motion approving fiscal year 2018-19 CDBG program priorities, fiscal year 2018-19 proposed CDBG funding allocated plan by funding category, and issuance of an RFP to the community for CDBG social services and to the community for CDBG capital improvements projects. B is Housing Authority motion approving fiscal year 2018-19 CDBG program priorities, fiscal year 2018-19 proposed CDBG funding allocation plan by funding category, and issuance of an RFP to the community for CDBG social services and to the community for CDBG capital improvements project. C is council resolution for appropriation transfer $370,000 in CDBG funds from the fiscal year 2017-18 homeless housing project to the fiscal year 2017-18 Pacific Park Splash Pad project as recommended by CDBG Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Mr. Ochoa? Yes, sir. Mayor, please, City Council, we have for you the annual action plan that will be presented by Director of Community Services and Parks, Mr. Bulanikian, with one additional wrinkle, as was read into the record by our city clerk. The monies that we had set aside for in a homeless facility, we are looking to reprogram the oldest money in that account and then be able to replenish it with new money that would be coming in and thus preserve council's authority to make a decision on that policy item later on. But Onik will give you the fine detail on that matter, as well as what we can expect as we head into the process, the RFP process for our continuum of care and local nonprofits.
Okay. So, Wallenikan?
Thank you, Mayor Garpetian, members of the council. Each year, the city of Glendale receives a formula entitlement funds from HUD to administer the community development, housing, and homeless programs for our community. The Community Service and Parks Department is charged with developing an annual plan for the use of these funds consistent with our strategic 5-year consolidated plan. Let me go back. The purpose of this meeting is to review and approve our CDBG program priorities for fiscal year 17-18, our funding allocation plan by category, and the issuance of the CDBG RFP for social service programs and capital improvement programs. The CDBG Advisory Committee responsibilities, what our 5-member committee does is review and comment on the annual needs assessment, recommend program priorities based on findings from the needs assessment as well as input from council. They review and recommend the proposed funding allocation plan, review quarterly reports, make recommendations, review proposals, and they review and approve revisions or amendments to projects throughout the program year. The committee meets 3 to 4 times a year, depending on if we have any changes in program priorities or any funding recommendations that we need to get approval from. So we meet basically 3 to 4 times per year. The program priorities for next fiscal year 18-19 is once again meets the same priorities from last fiscal year: homelessness, housing, social services, neighborhood improvements, and community improvements to community service facilities.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are those in any particular order or not?
No, they're not in order.
Thank you.
Yes, they're all in the, basically, these were the, when we had our meeting back in September 20th, we had 41 community members, and all 41 of them brought these items up, and we wanted the city to look into these program areas. The funds available for next year is basically the same as this fiscal year. We have 1.6 in CDBG funding, 145,000 in ESG, which is the Emergency Solutions Grant, and 900,000 in home funds. We're proposing from the 1.6 million, allocate 320 for administration, 240 for social services. This means that the nonprofits in the area can apply for some funding to operate their programs, and $1,040,000 for capital projects or neighborhood improvement projects. We do have 3 pre-designated projects in the amount of $640,000 city projects, and then we'll make $400,000 available for nonprofits in the area to apply under once when we issue the RFP. The $370,000 is the homeless housing project that Mr. Ocho was talking about. We would like to include $370,000 for 1819, the Section 108 loan that we need to for the Sensia building. We have a few more years. That loan will be paid off by 2021, and then $38,000 for the car park shade structure project, with a total of $640,000 designated for city capital improvement.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can we go back?
Yes.
The 370,000 homeless housing project. What is that about?
We currently have 740,000 allocated to the homeless housing project. We're working with the housing section to see if there are any properties available for the city to purchase and rehab for homeless clients, disabled clients. We're looking anywhere between 8 to 15 unit properties.
So all this is supplemental to Measure H, right? Whatever funds we're getting or not getting from that.
Yes, all of this is supplemental to Measure H. Measure H is county measure.
Right.
It's
which we have a buy-in because we're paying into it, and we
Yes.
should be getting monies from it. And our homelessness efforts should be funded through Measure H. I thought that's what Measure H was about. Now I'm looking at, again, $600,000 of very precious, very limited CDBG funds are going to homelessness efforts.
The 370 predates Measure H, the original 370, but certainly it's within council's purview. If you were to direct that on a going forward or even looking backwards basis for that matter, that you did not want to earmark those dollars, then they would go back into the CDBG allocation pool, if you will, to be absorbed by the RFP process. It's simply a reflection of where council had been previously.
Okay, thank you.
So, Councilmember Sinayan, in terms of Measure H, we'll be receiving $273,000 in direct funding. It'll come through the COC, and there will be grant opportunities for us to apply for some money for homeless projects. We currently, out of that $273,000, I believe there's around $60,000 a year for capital improvement for a homeless project.
And how is that 270? I mean, I know we're kind of segueing from this, but the totality of the picture has to be there in order for us to figure out if we're doing the right thing. So how is that money calculated? How do they calculate what our portion of Measure H monies are going to be?
I'll be coming to council in the next few weeks to talk about our Measure H funding and authorizing the $273,000. The 273 is only for 5 of the strategies, 5 out of the 20 strategies, I believe. So there's additional money from the other strategies that will come through LASA, the Homeless Authority.
And that's on an annual basis?
Annual
or?
basis, yes.
Okay.
So the proposal evaluation process, basically we get about 20 proposals a year, 15 for social service programs and 5 for CIP. During the RFP process, staff will conduct a one-day technical assistance for all the nonprofits to come in and apply for funding. Once the proposals are received, staff will prepare a one-page bullet point on strengths and weaknesses, and they'll attach it to the agency's proposal. The proposals are then forwarded to the CDBG Advisory Committee. They have 3 weeks to review, and then in late February, we'll have a meeting and invite all the agencies to come in and interview. The committee will also deliberate and will make their final funding recommendations to present to council in early April. So with that being said, staff is requesting City Council and the Housing Authority to approve fiscal year 18-19 program priorities, fiscal year 18-19 funding allocation plan, the issuance of the RFP, to have the nonprofits in the area apply for social service and capital improvement projects, and also, as Mr. Ochoa mentioned earlier, transfer of 17-18 CDBG funds in the amount of $370,000 from the homeless housing project to the splash pad at Pacific Park.
How much funds do we have? We allocated 2 years in a row to homeless housing project.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
what we did? This would have been the third year.
Correct.
So we are instead of putting money in that pot this time, we want to move it to the Pacific Park splash.
The current money that we have allocated for the homeless housing project is in 17-18. We want to take that money and transfer it over to the Pacific Park splash pad so we can start that project. And the 18-19, 370,000 will go into the homeless housing. So we'll have a total of 740,000.
So you're basically rolling that amount of money forward, right? Freeing up, so you don't keep 3 years worth of 370,000. You'll free up 1 year's worth of that to go towards a project that the committee and the staff had agreed was important there at Pacific Park, but still reserving that 740. If we can find a property that the council believes is a suitable location, then we would pursue that with the 740. Now, if the council decided that you didn't want to pursue that strategy any longer, then you would basically liquidate all of that and it would come back to this process. But truly, the function for today is those 5 priorities that the committee and the needs assessment had identified, the funding allocation formula that you see. We're talking about how the money does get split up, and then looking at the request by staff to issue an RFP. Those are the items that we're looking for today. So truly, you may want to decide at some future point that you want to liquidate that $740,000. That doesn't necessarily have to happen now because we are almost always oversubscribed by way of requests for funding from the RFP process.
So right now we have 740 in our account. We want to move 370 to Pacific Park splash pad project, and then next year we're going to replace it with
Replenish it,
370.
yes,
so
sir.
we will still have 740 end of next year.
Yes.
Fiscal year next
If you
year.
continue that policy while we look for a property, yes.
Got it. And also that 640,000 pre-designated for 3 city projects. What are those projects?
I'm sorry?
$640,000 pre-designated for 3 city projects.
370 is the homeless housing project.
No, I'm sorry, 640,000. Slide 6.
So
Yeah,
that's the
total
370?
That's the total of 370, the 232 for Essentia, and the 38 for the car park.
So the 108 loan, you really don't have too much discretion over. That's effectively debt service. And then the shade structure there at Car Park is something that, again, identified by the staff and the commission as something that's needed. As council will recall, this used to be a much larger amount, and the committee had said, stop pre-designating these CDBG fund dollars. Take that money, request ever so respectfully of the council that city council or city priorities come from the general fund or other sources, CIP, what have you, and free up those dollars. That's basically what you see here. The 370, as I say, is being banked, if you will, looking for that homeless housing project. The 232, as Onik says, will be recurring until 2021, presuming we still have CDBG, would then be freed up for services and projects. And then the 38, relatively small amount, is really just for the shade structure.
Okay. I'm a big fan of shade structure.
I know you are, sir. I know you are.
So,
And-
so one thing that, and CDBG is a little too close to home because I was a CDBG commissioner for 4 years, and I've sort of watched the funds dwindle down to what they are now. Because they, 10 years ago, we used to have much more. We used to get much more from the federal government, but we have what we have, and as the funds became less and less and less, the issue of the pre-designation became more and more acute. And the one thing that I think this council and staff accomplished, which was a positive move, was eliminating the funding of South Glendale Community Services Fund. Yes. And now that's being funded out of the general fund, I assume. So that was good. We shifted back the money towards what I think CDBG fundamentally is to be for. Although I know that our way, the way we spend the money in South Glendale fell within the definition of CDBG. But nevertheless, we brought it back into the general pot. But it seems like now we sort of said, okay, well, you take from one pocket and put in the other. Now it's gone towards homelessness services. And it's a large chunk of money. It's a large chunk of money.
It is, sir. That's a very good point because, as I say, this predates Measure H, and you'll recall folks coming to this council saying that you need to do more for homeless services. Council's response was, okay, we'll designate some money here and look for that location to satisfy HUD's housing first requirements or their priority. But now you have Measure H, and we will be competing. So as I say, for those dollars on top of the amount of money that we'll get as a direct subvention. But as you get the request for proposal back from community groups, you may want to liquidate some or all of that $370 a year that you put in.
So that's another question. How long can we keep CDBG funds in? I mean, how long aren't there requirements for us to spend them down within a?
Yes, you can't just bank them indefinitely. I want to say it's been the 24 months, is it not, Onik? 3 years. 36
3 years.
months.
Okay. And our did we have a stated goal for how many years we want to keep putting aside? Put Measure H aside for a second. How many years we want to do this?
We had anticipated at least 2, maybe 3, because of just land prices in Glendale and what a facility might cost in order to make a significant dent in the purchase price. But again, that's going to ultimately be council's prerogative. And now with Measure H in play, the field has changed a little bit. And so you'll have to make that policy choice as you go forward.
And now with us, the shifting of the 1 year's funds back for another purpose and backfilling it with the next year's funds, we're on year 2 or 3? Year 2.
Basically,
we would end up year 2.
640 is what you'll have.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, 740. 740. 370 times 2.
Sorry, Johnny.
Let's assume we are buying a property in South Glendale, and we are trying to negotiate with LA County, let's assume. And can this money be used on that project, but that a few of them will be allocated to the homeless group and the rest of them are others?
Generally speaking, yes. The devil's always in the details, and the color of money may come to play. But generally speaking, yes, you'll be able to take different pots of money as long as you're able to meet all of the funding requirements.
Thank you.
But until we, I just want to, but until we find a property, this money just sits there.
And I think, yes, ma'am, I think that's the point that we're trying to make sure that we have council support on, is that rather than just banking even the 3 years, there's a need in the community as voiced by Needs Assessment and CDBG Advisory Committee. Let some of that money go out and serve a purpose, and in this case it would be at Pacific Park for the splash pad.
Right. I noticed on the page, on the Exhibit 1, where you have identification of priority needs, and it says that the program priorities with slight emphasis on several youth social service programs and senior services. It's been suggested that we have a senior task force, and I'm wondering where that is at this point, and perhaps that could serve to meet some of these priority needs.
Most definitely. I think Onig can tell you about the recent needs assessment meeting that we had at the Adult Recreation Center 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago.
October 25th. We had about 50 participants, and staff's gathering the data, and we'll present it to council within the next few weeks.
Great. Okay, thank you, thank you. And the RFP process, that's not new, is it?
I'm sorry?
The RFP process?
not
That's
new.
Okay. That's all I have.
Well, in terms of social services for youth and families and seniors, we did have a number of city programs funded by CDBG. Now they are general funded. Those, even though they're not CDBG funded, the general fund picked up, and we'll continue to provide those services. That'll be Senior Meals Program, the STARS Program, Youth and Family Services Program.
If I can make a general comment, frequently individuals representing groups approach me and they ask about, well, are there funds that can be used for nonprofit organizations that provide, for example, social services in the city? And, obviously CDBG comes to mind, but then that's followed by the realistic thought that, new entities that have not been part of the CDBG process, they're not recipients of CDBG funding in the past, are unlikely to pass muster and deal with the administrative process, given the small amounts of money that we're able to allocate to each group. We have so many applicants, and that's very unfortunate. Not only does it discourage new groups from participating in the process and benefiting, and thereby providing the service that they intend to provide to our community members, but also we're sort of, some groups have been grandfathered in, and they keep coming back, which is great. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying the fact that others, the new entities, are almost virtually unable to come in is very unfortunate. So I think it's very important for us to sincerely sort of accept the fact that we need to allocate every penny possible towards these groups, and not use it to backfill other projects that we may not have, or other causes that at the time need to be urgent. Because if we do that, there's always going to be that next emergency cause that can qualify for CDBG funding, and we divert the funds in that direction. I'm just generally, I think we need to, again, this money needs to go to those groups that provide the type of service that the city of Glendale doesn't. We don't do that, but others do, and that's what CDBG funds are for. So with that in mind, Mr. Mayor, I see Armik Avedisian, I think he's the chair of CDBG Commission. Maybe we can ask him to say a few words. I don't know if...
Yeah, before I bring Armik up, I have a quick question. The home funds, we have $900,000 this year,
Yes.
and how much do we have in our account?
I'm going to refer to Peter Zovak from Housing.
Just about $2 million in the account for a future project.
Including this 900,000, or do we have 2 million right now, and with this we will be
Correct.
2.9?
Correct.
Okay, and how much time do we have to spend these home funds? Is there a time limit on it?
There's an overall limit of 4 years.
Overall limit of 4 years.
Correct. There used to be a shorter time period, but those requirements were eliminated.
I remember it was like 2 years or so. That's why I
Correct.
was asking this question. So,
Right.
if we put together our 740,000 along with the home funds, can we do a joint project between these two accounts for affordable housing?
Yes, that's always been the intent.
So because with the homeless funds, the housing funds for homeless, which is $700,000, is not a big dollar amount, but with,
Not at all.
if you combine this with 2.9 and maybe another 900,000 next year, we'll have about almost $5 million to do a meaningful project. I just wanted to know if we can put this together and do a joint project between the affordable housing for seniors or people or families, or as well as the homeless population.
Correct. That's been the direction, and we've been looking jointly for a project in which both CDBG, home, and any other potential funding source could be utilized for it.
Got it. Thank you. Mr. Avedisian, would you like to say a few words?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Council. Actually, I'm not the chair anymore. October 23rd was replaced by Mrs. Ramirez. So she is the new chair now. But as from what Sinanya was just mentioning about the funds and how we've been working with the funds and the new organizations coming through the process, we always look at them. We have had, last 2 years at least that I've been involved, we had organizations that came through the process. They fill out the applications, the forms, and whatnot. However, we look at in the general and very specific details of the organizations. If they really truly are serving this Glendale, we had organizations that partially serving and they don't have physical truly location in the city. So it doesn't really consider to be an organization that it actually serves the Glendale. So there have been issues, things like that. However, we want to, I was asking actually Mr. Carrillo last meeting that how do we get the word out to the other organizations that they haven't been participants or they haven't been receiving any funds. And with the RFP and the ads in the paper, basically that's the organizations, that's how they find out. And if, of course, if individually we know any organization that they want to participate or they need the funds, they can apply, they're qualified. Then I know the committee will look into it and will encourage them if there is, they meet all the qualifications, basically.
Last year, what was the smallest allocation for social services that you provided?
I think it was about $15,000.
15,000. So that's kind of still the amount.
Yeah.
That's enough to cover the
Very
insurance
small
and the
organization, very small, specific program that they wanted to cover. I think it was they were asking for about 25,000 or something. That they were allocated about 15,000.
And what's the largest last year?
Social services, the largest, if I remember it correctly, I think it was about 40,000, 45,000, something like
Right.
that.
And I know some of these groups do incredible things with that amount of money. I mean,
They do.
In terms
They
of
do.
the number of individuals that they actually
They do,
serve.
and believe me, on the committee base, we grill them very well to make sure that they don't waste the money, to make sure that what they say and what they do are exactly the same. Because we're looking to make sure that everybody gets the fair share and does the service what it's meant to be.
And you think you have enough money?
More money, more we can do. All the organizations, they love it. But unfortunately, it's cutting down day by day.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Abdis.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Bulanikian.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Two motions, Mr. Mayor. One for the council, one for the housing authority. Oh, sorry. Three motions. Two for the council, one for the housing authority.
Okay, motion for council?
Items 1A and C.
Which one are three?
1A and C.
Okay, I move the 1AC,
A and C, yes.
A and C. Okay.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian, Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes.
Thank you.
And
for authority?
We need a motion for 1B.
I move 1B for housing.
You're moving it?
Yeah, because I'm a member of housing.
Oh, for housing. Yes, sir. I'll second it.
Roll call?
Authority members Agajanian,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Najarian, Karazian, Sinanian,
Yes.
Chair Devine.
Yes.
Okay. We don't have any other business. Is there a
Motion for council?
Yes.
Thank you.
Second.
Roll call, please.
We do not
No, we
require a roll
don't.
call.
Motion
We
for
just-
housing authority?
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Roll call?
We are adjourned for both housing and for council.